Are we unknowingly stuck in a role we never signed up for, being full-time babysitters, just because we are grandparents? Many people enter retirement with dreams of a peaceful, easygoing life, one where they can travel, take care of themselves, and enjoy their golden years. But in reality, those dreams often get replaced with diapers, baby food, unfinished meals, and sleepless nights, all because they agreed to help take care of the grandkids for a while. A while sometimes turns into 5 years, 10 years, or even the rest of their lives. At an age when they should have every right to relax, many grandparents find themselves working unpaid, without days off, and without recognition. And what's worse, they sometimes get blamed for doing it the wrong way, not raising the child scientifically, or even spoiling the kid. So maybe it is time to make a firm decision. We should visit our grandkids, not raise them. A decision that protects our health, our freedom, and our dignity. In this video, I am going to peel back the layers behind the role of grandparent babysitter, talk about why you need to learn how to say no with grace, and most importantly, how to live your later years the way they were meant to be lived, without silent sacrifice that no one remembers. Before we begin, leave a comment down below with a positive affirmation, a promise to yourself for your new life ahead. Something like, "I choose to live for myself," or anything else that speaks to your heart. And do not forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you will not miss out on meaningful content like this. Let's build a joyful, empowered, and energetic senior community together. And to understand why we need to draw a clear line when it comes to babysitting, we first need to take a hard look at our own lives, a long journey full of sacrifice. But is it truly fair if the final chapter still demands us to carry more burdens? Throughout life, each person moves through phases of clearly defined responsibilities. Childhood and adolescence are years dedicated to learning, not just gaining knowledge, but preparing for the future. Adulthood is the phase of working, getting a job, starting a family, building a career, and raising children. For decades, most people put responsibilities ahead of personal needs. That is why retirement is seen, both by society and by the individual, as a major turning point. It is the phase where those societal responsibilities are meant to come to an end. This should be the time for older adults to recover physically and mentally, to enjoy the fruits of their lifelong labor, and to focus on themselves, their hobbies, their forgotten friendships, and their long-postponed dreams. However, what happens in many families is something completely different. Instead of resting, many elderly people find themselves stepping into a second life, with a brand new role, full-time nanny to their grandchildren. Many grandparents, just as they finish their careers or businesses and are barely adjusting to a slower lifestyle, are suddenly thrown into a whirlwind of early mornings and diaper changes. This role is often undefined, with no clear agreements and certainly no support. Older people take on the responsibility of babysitting, not always by free will, but because of family pressure, love for their children, or the traditional belief that grandparents must help with the grandkids. The result: they become unpaid workers in their own homes. Unpaid not just financially, but emotionally as well. The negative impacts of this are obvious. First, their physical health suffers. Caring for young children requires energy. Holding them, cooking school drop-offs, waking up early and staying up late, all of which put enormous strain on a body that is already aging and more vulnerable to fatigue and injury. Second, they lose personal freedom. Many grandparents have no time of their own. They cannot travel, join social activities, rest when they want, or meet friends. Their daily life revolves entirely around the child's schedule. Third, there is emotional exhaustion. When the sacrifice is simply expected of them, many older people feel like they are no longer respected as independent individuals. They live in a state of constant tiredness and sometimes even silent resentment, but they dare not speak up, afraid of being called selfish or accused of not loving their grandchild. What makes this especially dangerous is how quietly and gradually it happens. There is no major event to mark the moment their role was taken over. But over time, they lose themselves. No more quiet moments, no more dreams, not even small wishes, like a peaceful afternoon, reading a book, or a short vacation away from home. The problem is not whether babysitting is right or wrong. The real issue is that elderly people deserve the choice. They should have the right to say yes or no to that role and be respected if they choose to live for themselves. Modern society needs to shift its mindset. Grandparents are not automatic babysitters, and no one should be expected to give up the rest of their lives just to keep others happy. But if it were just about physical exhaustion, it might still be manageable. What hurts grandparents even more are the invisible gaps between generations. One of the biggest reasons many grandparents feel pressure while babysitting is the clear difference in parenting styles between generations. The way children were raised in the past is not just different in terms of knowledge, but in life, philosophy, social environment, and the psychology of being a parent. Grandparents grew up in times of hardship and scarcity, so when raising children, their main goal was to make sure the child was well fed, slept well, and stayed healthy. Traditional parenting methods like feeding kids a lot to help them grow faster, letting them watch television to stay still, or calming them down with sweets, all came from a place of love and real-life experience. However, today's younger parents have access to a wealth of modern information, from books, the internet, child psychologists, and pediatricians. They focus on healthy eating, limiting sugar, avoiding screens at an early age, and following scientific parenting methods that align with developmental milestones, both emotional and intellectual. Raising a child has become a serious investment project, with planned strategies and clear goals. And this is where the conflict begins. A child being fed a few extra spoonfuls of rice or given a small piece of cake before dinner can spark a sharp reaction from the parents. Letting the grandchild watch cartoons for a bit while cooking dinner might lead to complaints about screen time and brain development. Or letting the child play outside for too long and catching a cold suddenly turns into accusations that the grandparents were careless or not watching properly. These situations may seem small on the surface, but for older people, especially those who have poured their heart and soul into caring for the child, such blunt criticism can feel deeply hurtful and invalidating. They are not just upset about being scolded, but about feeling like they have lost their role and no longer have the trust they once did. If these emotional wounds are not resolved, they will build up over time. Grandparents begin to feel nervous, hesitant while caring for their grandchild, or silently endure the tension without saying a word. Meanwhile, the parents grow frustrated, thinking, we have explained this already. Why do they not listen? These quiet misunderstandings grow bigger, often over things that seem insignificant. And sadly, without open communication, these differences can slowly crack the bond between family members. Grandparents may begin to avoid interaction, withdraw emotionally, or even grow distant from the grandchild. Parents in turn feel stuck, unsure how to balance parenting standards with their appreciation for the grandparents' help. This is the reality in many modern families, where love is abundant, but listening, sharing, and mutual respect are lacking. And what is most heartbreaking is that the ones who suffer the most are often the elderly, the very people who once gave everything to their families and now ask for nothing more than a little understanding and recognition. So if you are already stepping into the role of a caregiver for your grandchild, it is important to be clear, only offer help within your limits and only when you feel comfortable doing so. More importantly, both generations need to learn how to communicate so that differences do not turn into cracks, but become opportunities for deeper understanding. Clearly, love alone is not enough. When differences exist, the most important thing is that grandparents know how to respond wisely, in a way that keeps the peace, but also preserves their own sense of self. In modern life, One of the hardest questions older adults face is this: should they continue caring for their grandchild every day as a silent responsibility, or should they dare to set boundaries and live for themselves? This is no longer just a personal issue within one family. It has become a widespread reality in many households, where the love of grandparents is slowly being consumed by a never-ending cycle of care. What may have started from compassion, well, since our child is working and we are free at home, we might as well help, can over time turn into an unspoken obligation. No one asks if the grandparents are tired. No one checks if they still want to continue. And so day after day, the elderly quietly shoulder this responsibility as if it were their duty, even though no one ever said it out loud. But now is the time for us, the older generation, to understand one simple truth: taking care of grandchildren is a choice, not an obligation. And if it is a choice, then it should only be made when we truly want to, when we genuinely feel good about it, not because we are pressured or afraid of being judged. Saying no does not mean you love any less. A gentle, thoughtful no is actually a wise act. It protects relationships in the long run. You can say something like, "We can help a few days a week, but the rest of the time we need to rest." A sentence that's simple carries huge meaning. It encourages your children to be more proactive and helps you keep the freedom you deserve. Because the later years of life are not meant for more burden. They are for living slower, deeper, and for yourself. When grandparents visit instead of babysit all day, something beautiful happens. Their health is protected, their minds feel lighter, and family relationships become more positive. Every visit becomes a joyful memory, not just a routine of exhaustion. Most importantly, when released from the full-time babysitter role, older adults finally have time for themselves, taking morning walks, reading books, reconnecting with old friends, joining a dance class, traveling, or simply sitting peacefully with a cup of tea, without being interrupted. A life like that, simple yet meaningful, is exactly what old age deserves. The truth is, you do not need to care for your grandchild all day to be a good grandparent. In fact, when you live a healthy, joyful, independent life, that becomes the most precious gift you can offer your children and grandchildren. Allow yourself to live a valuable older life, not through silent sacrifice, but through conscious, loving choices. And once you have the courage to set boundaries and live for yourself, the next question becomes, how can you live a truly fulfilling life in your later years? Let us explore some new, inspiring, and positive directions. The first and easiest thing you can do is join clubs that match your interests. From sports, music, poetry, and meditation to dancing, or even tech classes for seniors. These not only keep your body active and your mind sharp, but the social environment is a powerful emotional medicine, a space where older adults can connect, share, learn, and feel valued in today's fast-paced world. Next, if possible, try learning a new skill, even if it is just to satisfy your curiosity. It might be learning how to use a smartphone more effectively, arranging flowers, painting, cooking a new dish, or even writing your memoir to preserve precious memories. These small activities can have a big impact. They awaken your zest for life, help you escape the boredom of routine, and, most importantly, give you the feeling of control over your own life. Do not forget that staying connected with friends is an essential emotional medicine. A chat over tea, small get-togethers, short trips with old pals, all of these help seniors feel less lonely, reminding them that they still have companions and laughter in their lives. In that world, you are no longer just grandpa of little A or grandma of baby B. You are you, a complete person, living fully and richly with all your experiences. More importantly, old age is a chance to finally do the things you once missed, not because you did not have time, but because you were always putting others first. Now you can travel to the places you once dreamed of, spend hours in a quiet bookstore, or simply enjoy a long afternoon nap without being woken up by the cry of a baby. When you live for yourself, Your emotional well-being is no longer tied to your grandchild. You do not feel abandoned when your children are busy or disappointed when the grandkids no longer cling to you like they used to, because now you have your own life, your own joys and your own goals, and you no longer let your happiness be entirely dependent on others. Living for yourself is not selfish. It is knowing how to love yourself properly so you can become a positive role model for your children and grandchildren. A rich life in old age does not need to be loud, but it should be meaningful. It does not need everyone's praise, just your own satisfaction. However, to live a fulfilling old age and maintain harmony in the family, there is one essential key: mastering the art of communication between generations under the same roof. When living together as a family, especially in the dynamic of grandparents, parents, and grandchildren, differences in viewpoints, lifestyles, and expectations are inevitable. The goal is not to eliminate all conflict, but to handle it with grace and wisdom, turning those differences into bonding opportunities instead of points of friction. For grandparents, the first and most important rule is do not impose. Your life experience is incredibly valuable, but it should not be used to force your children into submission. Every generation has its own ways of raising and caring for children. Grandparents should offer support and advice, not judgment or control. Learn to listen before sharing your opinion. Put yourself in the younger generation's shoes to understand why they do things differently. With understanding, your advice becomes softer and much easier to receive. At the same time, grandparents should also learn how to say no kindly but clearly. Do not take on more than you can handle just because you are afraid to disappoint your family. Saying no is not a rejection of love. It is a way of protecting your well-being so you can be there for the long haul. Say no when you are tired, busy, or simply when something does not feel right. That is your right, and it should be expressed with confidence and kindness. Above all, grandparents should not silently sacrifice themselves for extended periods of time. Unrecognized sacrifice easily turns into resentment and emotional fatigue, damaging family relationships. Choose to give within limits, with boundaries, rest, and breaks, as a supportive partner, not someone expected to carry it all. On the other hand, the parents, your children, also need to be aware and grateful. Whether the grandparents are willing to help or not, their contribution is support, not a given. Never let their kindness turn into a mandatory expectation. A sincere thank you, a thoughtful gift on special occasions, or even just asking how they are doing, all these go a long way in making grandparents feel appreciated. Young parents in particular should avoid falling into the habit of taking help for granted or using phrases like, "but you're free all day," or "it's just babysitting." These words can make older adults feel like their role is being diminished. Instead, respect their boundaries. If they say no, accept it and look for alternatives. If they can only help part-time, do not hand over the entire responsibility. When both generations show respect and understanding, the family environment becomes so much healthier and happier. Grandparents no longer feel used, parents do not feel judged, and the grandchildren grow up in a space filled with love and empathy. It does not have to be perfect. Just a little more thoughtfulness, a little more listening, a little more patience, and your home becomes a place to return to, not a source of stress or hurt. Old age is not a leftover chapter of life, and it is certainly not a resting place where others are free to lean on you without question. It is a time to slow down, to live more deeply, and to live fully for yourself, with peace, meaning, and intention. If you are able to help your children and grandchildren, then do it with love, but never to the point of sacrificing your freedom or your health. And if you need to say no, say it gently but firmly, because that is your right. You deserve rest. You deserve joy. And you deserve to take charge of your remaining years in the way that feels right for you. If this message resonates with you, leave a comment below as a promise to yourself. Something like, I choose to live my golden years fully and freely. And do not forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so we can continue sharing stories, advice and uplifting perspectives made just for older adults. We may not get to live our youth again, but we absolutely can live a meaningful, memorable old age.